basically have stunted or completely removed fingers. John Wong here is, if you've seen the prosthetic on my desk.
This is what ABS is, amniotic band syndrome. Fully formed thumb, but the 4 digits are obviously not fully formed.
So one of the interesting things about this problem is every presentation is different. This is one of the tools we use for gathering information about patients that our group works with. We take a video to get range of motion and establish scale for children that we're working with. So you can see there's a dime in frame, which we take still frames from the video and then establish scale using the dime, and then remotely attempt to fit these assistive devices to that geometry. So you can see here's another presentation of ABS. You can see that it's this kid Gage actually has a total of 8 functional fingers, and even the ABS only stunted the development of his index and middle finger on his left hand. So again, every presentation is different. So it's a kind of a tricky problem. No 2 cases are the same. Again, we're dealing with children, so these kids are growing. In the same way you need new shoes, you'll need new prosthetics, new assistive devices for that limb as it grows. We're also very distributed. We work with people all over the world, so they're huge geographic distances. And we're also working with children, which kind of holds your design to different standards than a lot of the products and things we interact with on a daily basis. So this is, as a lot of you've probably guessed, a pretty great problem to address with 3D printers, which are distributed devices that can make infinitely customizable, adaptable pieces of hardware. And a couple of years ago, the gentleman on the left, Richard Van Os, he's a South African carpenter, had a pretty serious woodworking accident and lost 4 fingers on his right hand. And while he's at the hospital, he immediately started planning how to replace those 4 fingers. He wanted to make replacements. The gentleman on the right is Ivan Owen, who's a Washington-based mechanical prop designer with a specialty in mechanical hands. He makes quite a wide variety of hands at a pretty huge, pretty large scale. But one day Richard Van Os saw videos on YouTube of Ivan Owen's creations and realized that these are anatomically quite similar to human fingers and could be scaled down, and in terms of motion and function are very close. They're exactly based on human motion, and they're also body driven. So there are no actuators, sensors, power supplies, anything like that. So the 2 of them collaborated to develop this original RoboHand. And Richard Van Os has gone on to start an organization developing and selling these devices. So you can see it's 3D printed parts coupled with orthoplastic, which is a medical grade formable plastic that interfaces with the body. MakerBot donated 2 machines to Richard Van Os and Ivan Owen so that they could collaborate across 10,000 miles and share design files via email and then print out the designs and work with the same physical pieces of hardware. Part of that project was a MakerBot designer named Michael Curry developed a somewhat simplified, in some respects, 3D printable, nearly fully 3D printable version of that original RoboHand. So it relies on quite a few snap pin connectors. So you can print out everything but the elastic cables that return the fingers to their straight position, and the kind of drive tendons that allow the user to grasp. So I should also explain, these are body-driven prosthetics. So the way they work is because folks with ABS or symphodactylar amputations, if they have a palm, if you have a wrist, a working wrist, you can use that to mechanically drive a prosthesis. And so when the back hands of this device mounts on the forearm and the front half mounts on the palm, and so when you bend the palm forward, it clasps the fingers shut, and so you get this what's called gross grasp. So it's not individual fingers, but it does let you grab objects. So it was about at this time that John Scholl here, who's the founder of e-NABLE, saw all of these things happening. And this is when e-NABLE kind of emerged on the scene. So, do you want me to draw the slides?
Sure, sure.
So
let me just say, the way the story goes is I came on the scene about 7 months ago when a video went around about this original RoboHand saying, we're working on this, and Van Az and Ivan Owen did an Indiegogo campaign just to get $10,000 to begin making these for kids with ABS. This plugged into an opportunity I had been thinking about for a couple of years for what you might call a distributed, crowdsourced, cloud-based skunkworks in the sky for assistive technologies. And all I did was attach a comment to the video as it was going around saying, because I'd noticed that several people with 3D printers said, this is really cool, I would do that. So I called their bluff. I attached a note to the video. You know YouTube comments. This was a helpful YouTube comment, and it said, if you have a 3D printer and you'd like to help make hands for kids who need them, put yourself on this Google map that I produced. And they did. So the map went from like 6 people to 70 people in a few months. We created a Google community, which went from 70 people to, as of today, probably around 540, and it's growing by 10 or 15 a day. People with 3D printers, there's something going on here. And what this slide illustrates is that while we have yet to realize our full potential as a crowdsourced distribution channel, which is a huge potential if you've got 500 people around the world with printers, the research and development proliferation is well underway. Here you can see the original RoboHand at the top. That spawned the snap-together RoboHand, and Andreas was early in on the game working on this mesh-based gauntlet. Jorge here developed the Cyborg Beast, which is really a version 2.0. And the next slide just shows that these designs have now started combining, recombining, proliferating, and I like to say it's a virtual Cambrian explosion, right, of designs for new hands. Next slide. And they are now beginning to find their way to one after another of these adorable children with now these way cool X-Man style enhanced hands. So this guy, young Leon McCarthy and Paul McCarthy have become sort of poster child and dad for this and been on all sorts of news reports, and they're very telegenic and charismatic. And as a matter of fact, Paul has now worked through our group with several other dads who are now making hands for their kids. And so it's a really interesting thing if you think about it. This is usually labor intensive and so time consuming that it does not get done for an underserved population. But if you can crowdsource the design and the customization and the printing, you've actually got a scalable solution to a really interesting problem, and it becomes then a laboratory for looking at everything from, if you will, distributed manufacturing, distributed design, online collaboration, transhumanism, the future of philanthropy, the nature of organizations, and so here we are. Okay, and then maybe this is a good time for Nick to talk about some of the, pardon the expression, hands-on experiences that we've had.
So this is a video of one of our kind of most rigorous members, Peregrine Hawthorne, who his first post was something to the effect of, my hand really doesn't hold up well when I'm hacking brush with the machete, and it really doesn't hold up to wood splitting very well. So he's really put the hands, he's done a lot of very intense testing of the hands.
Right.
So the modularity is very good because he breaks the fingers a lot.
His day job until just recently was a package handler for UPS, so he's really put it through the paces. And with this newest model, the Talon hand here, he reported that the day after he started wearing the newest model, he accidentally crushed a soda can while he was absent-mindedly sitting at a bus stop. So we're really getting there. And yet, you should know, there are still huge opportunities for improvement, and Jorge is going to talk a little bit about some of the research he's doing actually evaluating this.
So this is the hand that Jorge, with his group in Brighton University in Nebraska, developed called the Cyborg Beast. So you can see it's, compared to a lot of those earlier models, it has some potential ergonomic improvements, much more streamlined. There's definitely more attention paid to routing cables. If you'd like to talk at all about the research process, or.
And one thing you haven't said yet is it's a lot prettier, frankly.
That's it.
I mean, and if you flip through later on, you're going to see another one with little stars on the wrist piece, which is for a little 9-year-old girl in Milwaukee. That's her. Doesn't have stars yet. And I used to run, Genoan has kindly taken over that. Used to answer all of the messages that our Facebook page got from parents asking for hands and press asking for stories and all that stuff. And from the parents, almost every message you would expect to start with, oh, my kid has such and such partial limb and I was wondering if I could get him a hand. But they all start with, well, lately my little kid has been kind of getting shy about his partial limb and he's hiding it in pictures and he saw this RoboHand and he got really excited and we were wondering if we could get him one. And then they get these things, and you can see just from the pictures of them, they go from every single picture as opposed like this, where they're hiding their hand, to they've got that in front of them. And it's all cute. And, look, I'm a cyborg now. And Jorge actually got kind of bullied into including a bunch of psychology stuff in his study because.
Well, we're running a study.
So interesting.
These mechanical devices. Typically, you would think about functionality. You say, okay, functionality is the main issue. And I have a group in my institution of occupational therapists, biomechanists, and physical therapists that work together in order to solve these problems. I'm a muscle function, that's my area of expertise, is muscle function of any type. So we got together working on this, and the first thing we noticed that the hand wasn't a whole lot functional. As compared to a regular hand, you would understand that it's not a lot. It's not very functional. But as these hands were being handed out to people, we found something very important. We found something that the muscle aspects of the wrist. And we found that by looking at the pictures, the kid's forearm, the forearm of the muscle, the wrist muscle, were getting a little bit bigger. So that's muscle hypertrophy. That's a big deal because you see, when you don't have fingers, or you have half of your palm, you don't really activate all those muscles. So you lose muscle mass. So not only one side of you looks a little bit thinner than the other, but also changes your posture. Not only changes your posture, also has some metabolic, some metabolic issues because you're losing active tissue, which muscle it is. It takes oxygen and you burn calories by sitting there. But regardless of all of that, we found that forgetting about functionality for 1 second, which is very important, but if we leave it aside, we found that this kid, just by trying it, the muscles were getting stronger, improved some of them the range of motion, and we're doing this, with children. So we have children as young as 3 years of age, and adults as old as 50 years of age. They go to the lab, we do all this testing, we do ultrasound measures, we put electrodes, we measure electromyographic activity, force development, without the hand, with the hand, and all the stuff. So what's happening is that these kids are improving their muscle mass, which, if you think about it, if at this age they are not very responsible, so the first thing they'll do with these hands, they're going to get them wet, they're going to get dirty, they're going to break them, they're going to fight with their sister and throw it away. The dog will be playing with those hands. I know, see, they're going to break, but no big deal, we can make a new one very cheaply. And that's the problem that prosthetics companies have a big issue. Their devices range between, what, 8 to 40,000 for a power-driven device. These hands, the hands that e-NABLE is making, is about $50, maybe $100. Okay, if you mess it up, a few designs, you print a lot, $100. And they're improving their muscle mass. So in the future, when they are a little more responsible, as a teenager, well, I won't call that responsibility as a teenager. The front lobe is not fully developed, but whatever. Regardless of that, they can use a myoelectric device, except for Nick, though. Nick is one of a kind. This kid is super special. No, she's really. So look, you can use a myoelectric device. You see, so the major problem with myoelectric device is the voltage from the muscle. If your muscles are weak and atrophiated, so that they're not developing enough voltage to activate the sensors for the myoelectric device to work. Well, if as a kid you use these things to go to high school, go to whatever you do, then when you're older, a little more responsible, you can use this expensive myoelectric device, hopefully not expensive, and so on. And that's basically what we're doing in Orange Institution.
So, for a concrete example of that whole little kids aren't going to get a real prosthetic device, I'm making one for a 4-year-old who lives in Redwood City. And one of the first questions her dad asked me was, so can I just toss this in the dishwasher, or... Because she's got a little myoelectric thing where she flexes a loose muscle in her nub, and it'll do this with the little thumb. But it's got all this soft, like, silicone on it, and it costs who knows how much, so, I mean, she could shred that thing in a few minutes on a tree. So this is going to be her outside prosthesis and her fun prosthesis, pretty much.
So one of the really unique things that I don't think I've seen a whole lot especially in the maker community, which is largely what we're drawing upon. So you can see we're collaborating with some academic research groups who really have tremendous academic resources, both intellectual, financial, and in terms of equipment. So it's a really unique collaboration. This is Shay, who's a 9-year-old girl who's collaborating with Frankie Flood, who's an assistant professor at the University of Milwaukee. He's been doing a lot of great testing of the designs that are emerging from the community, as well as contributing himself. And that's one of the kind of big parts of what e-NABLE is doing is iterating upon those early designs that were just released about a year ago. So you can see there are already some more attention is being paid to aesthetics, which are definitely a big consideration when designing these devices. There's a lot of potential. I mean,